Excellencies, dear participants, thank you very much for your presence today, and I welcome you to the ASWAN Forum, specifically to the session Compounded Threats, Fragmented Response, Is the Sahel Experiencing a Worsening Crisis? I'm Christopher Gascon, Regional Director for IOM for West and Central Africa. It's my honor to preside this session, which we expect will be lasting about 75 minutes. If you allow me, I would like to draw some contextual remarks from a UN study on the Sahel towards a resilient, inclusive, and prosperous Sahel region. The Sahel is the fastest growing population in the world, and with about 324 million people in 2017 and expected to reach 724 million by 2050. For decades, the UN has recognized that the Sahel has claimed its place in the global spotlight, largely as a zone of conflict and intractable development challenges, warring population dynamics, vulnerability to climate change, protracted conflicts, governance issues, dependence on humanitarian and development aid, are trends that continue to shape the region's economic and social landscape. In 2014, the human capital represented 43% of the total wealth of the Sahel countries, compared to 71% in the OECD countries. Human capital deficit is associated with low productivity, weak institutions. In addition, gender disparities need to be addressed, particularly at the school entry levels and in main economic activities. For instance, girls receive on average 2.4 years of education compared to 4.2 for boys, which is low by any standards. These inequities also appear in economic activities and in productive resources, including low access to land, finance, and labor markets, which impede effort to achieve inclusive growth and development. The Sahel countries are climatically the most vulnerable in Africa, with extreme weather conditions such as drought and floods. Climate change is and will remain a key factor, compounding the problem of an already fragile environment conditions, leading to food insecurity, human vulnerability, poverty, and social unrest. One of the major challenges facing the Sahel region is governance. The deficit is epitomized by corruption, conflicts, and extreme violence spurred by institutional weakness. There's also an emergence of non-governmental spaces, leading to geopolitical confrontation, exacerbated by combined effects of resource conflicts and an erosion of social cohesion. Yet, despite the negative trends I have outlined above, the Sahel is endowed with abundant natural resources: oil, bauxite, gold, and uranium, lakes, river basins, underground water resources, and aquifers, which, if managed equitably and sustainably, could turn the region's fortunes around. With the current digital era, the region is experiencing a technological dynamic supported by large penetration of mobile services. This positive move could lead to new economic opportunities, particularly in the trade and financial services, with the adoption of the African Continental Free Trade Area. One moment, please. Oh, yes. No. The Sahel crisis is one of the worst humanitarian crises in the world. Unprecedented levels of armed violence, rights violation, and displacement, amplified by the consequences of climate change, are drastically affecting the lives of people in Mauritania, Burkina Faso, Mali, Senegal, Nigeria, and Niger. The situation is increasingly becoming a complex humanitarian crisis. Due to some of the characteristics of the region, such environmental erosion, which impacts the scarcity of resources and exposure to natural hazards such as floods and drought, porosity of borders, trafficking of arms, drugs, and people, as well as presence of armed extremist groups, the region is in constant risk of conflict and violence. Additionally, due to the current pandemic, the subsequent reduction of people's mobility has contributed towards extra tensions arising in the competition for resources, access to land and water, loss of jobs and isolation, which places the populations at higher risk of famine, danger, and death. In the last 2 years, the number of IDPs in the Sahel region has increased from 70,000 to more than 3 million. That is a staggering 191% increase. Burkina Faso alone bears the brunt of the numbers with approximately 1 million IDPs itself. Additionally, there are about 868,000 refugees in the silent seekers. Furthermore, this humanitarian and protection emergency has seen an exacerbation of pre-existing challenges such as climate change and food insecurity due to the added layer of the current COVID-19 pandemic. Lockdown and other COVID-19 prevention measures have pushed an additional 6 million people in the region into extreme poverty, with 4.8 million, most of them children, in need of urgent nutrition assistance and an additional 7.4 million facing food insecurity. In total, it is estimated that more than 13.4 million people are in urgent need of humanitarian assistance. Failure to address root causes of irregular migration and forced displacement, most notably conflict, fragility drivers, weak presence of state institutions, and climate change are among the key factors that place people on the move at heightened risk during the pandemic. An example can be drawn from the Lipato-Gourma region, where armed groups stepped up their attacks, causing the displacement of more than 900,000 people. This resulted in withdrawal of public authorities and further erosion of much needed services. Facilities have been damaged and destroyed. This myriad of factors is expected to have negative longer-term consequences. Displaced affected communities further affected by the pandemic are a potential for future conflict and instability, which would erode possibilities for peace and development in the region. I will end my participation here, and we're looking forward to our esteemed panelists' contributions today. Let me just, for housekeeping's sake, before I hand over the floor, ask everyone if they can include their recommendations in their remarks. This, for time constraints, as I mentioned, we do have 75 minutes. So at this point, if with your permission, I will now present in successive order our panelists, and beginning at this moment with His Excellency Minister of Foreign Affairs from the Republic of Nigeria, Mr. Jeffrey Onyema. I would, to open his presentation, I would ask a sort of a leading or orienting question, if I may. Sir, in our quest to provide a future of hope and prosperity for Nigerians, our administration has embarked on measures to ensure enhanced national resilience, as you know. Your Excellency, these were the words of the President Buhari in the 75th session of the United Nations General Assembly held last September. During his speech, President Buhari also alluded to the ongoing menace of terrorism that continues to threaten the country's security and highlighted the importance of prioritizing vulnerable groups, including women, children, and the unemployed in response to the pandemic. President Buhari is also a strong proponent of the inclusion of youth. In light of the immense challenges posed by the COVID-19 pandemic, how has your country responded to the compounded risks to security and development in the region, given the proximity of and overlapping challenges between the Sahel and the Lake Chad Basin? How does Nigeria envisage the imperative of a coherent regional collaboration and ownership in response to these challenges? More importantly, how do you envisage the priorities upon which regional and international collaboration must focus in order to find pathways towards enhancing the Sahelian state's national resilience? And finally, how do you envisage the role of women and youth in carving that path? Your Excellency, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much indeed. for that. Okay, I'll get right into it and try to be as to the point as possible. With regards to the response to risks to security development in the region, given the overlapping challenges between Sahel and the Lake Chad Basin. Well, we are approaching it in various ways. Of course, education is absolutely key. Girl-child education and also youth education. De-radicalization programs, because obviously that's an element in the insurgency and extreme militancy in the area. So we have programs on those. Job creation is, of course, absolutely key, and working very hard in that context. One of the big projects that we believe will be a game changer in the Lake Chad region, Basin region in particular, is the recharging of the Lake Chad. This is it's shrunk by huge amounts, about 30% of what it used to be, and this was a source of livelihood to about 30 or 40 million people. So we see that as a key objective, but unfortunately, it's also extremely capital intensive and would cost huge amounts of money. But we've already, spent some to carry out some, fact finding with regards to the costs and all that. Then, of course, there's a great green wall. It's something that we're investing also in. It has the potential of employing about 10 million people, 10 million jobs. And so we're engaging with the UN and other partners in the tree planting and other initiatives around that again will create jobs, livelihood, and for that region. Of course, infrastructure development, housing, especially for the internally displaced, is also another area that we're engaging with together with development partners. And as far as the security is concerned, regionally, of course, there's the ECOWAS $1 billion priority action plan for 2020 to 2024 on counterterrorism and cross-border crime. Our government has already paid in a substantial amount to that fund, and so that's a concrete regional initiative to address the security challenges of the sub-region. Then there's the ECOWAS, standby force that we're also supporting to activate and also use it for counter-terrorism as well. And we also have the multinational joint task force, which is based in N'Djamena, Chad, and comprises the countries of the Lake Chad area, which was set up in response to the terrorist and insurgency threats to that Lake Chad region. So those are the concrete activities we have taken in response to the risks to security development in that region, and also which, of course, these challenges overlap with the Sahel as well. On envisaging the imperative of coherent regional collaboration and ownership in response to these challenges. Again, as I've mentioned, the ECOWAS $1 billion priority action plan is a very clear regional collaboration mechanism, which is owned by the ECOWAS member states, and in fact was set up precisely to give that ownership and to give the independence of action for the countries of that sub-region. And beyond that, the plan aims to promote, the culture of peace and support frameworks for religious practice through inclusive dialogues, including religious and community leaders, women, young people, and relevant civil society groups. And then also, again, as part of the regional collaboration, the multinational joint task force that I spoke about earlier, which is completely owned by the countries of the Lake Chad region in response to security challenges. Then on the issue of priorities upon which regional and international collaboration is focused to find a pathway to enhancing resilience of Sahelian states, we would say, and this is what we also seek to practice within our country, good governance is absolutely at the heart of it, good inclusive governance. Then education, of course, is absolutely key. Job creation is very, very important. Young population, as you highlighted in your introduction, and infrastructure development, housing and roads and so forth that can support greater economic activity. And regarding the role of women and youth in carving pathways to enhanced resilience, of course, the empowerment of women and youth through education, participation in governance, and also greater stake and participation in the economy, and good, well-paying jobs. And the conclusions that I would include, as you said, they should be included at the outset. Clearly, leaders and stakeholders must intensify efforts in addressing these root causes of increasing violence in the Sahel countries, but while also underscoring the essence of international cooperation to protect the gains that will be achieved through collective security mechanism, secondly, to guarantee sustainable peace and stability in the Sahel region amidst this COVID-19 pandemic. Our collaborative efforts must not only be multifaceted in approach, but also a deliberate utilization of necessary military responses with appropriate development intervention, where necessary. And this must bear in mind the local communities, religion, and traditional leaders in peace building and pacification. They must also be part of this response. Governments of Sahel states must show some level of sustained effectiveness in public service delivery, particularly in the remote areas and the borderlands, where intercommunal and violent extremist activities prevail. And there should also be a more practical collaboration, particularly in the areas of funding and intelligence sharing between the G5 Sahel Joint Force, the AU-ECOWAS peacekeeping missions, and external partners such as the European Union and the United Nations multidimensional integrated stabilization mission in Mali, the MINUSMA, to effectively address the security and humanitarian challenges in the Sahel. There should also be a ministerial forum, in my opinion, for ministers of foreign affairs of the Sahel member states to meet possibly 2 to 3 times a year to discuss, assess, and proffer solutions to the challenges of the region. And also the government of Sahel countries should, as a matter of urgency, strive to tackle corruption by all means, especially by building resilient institutions, as you've also pointed out, as well as increasing transparency. As we're aware, corruption and lack of transparency in government remains one of the Achilles heels of development and stability in the region. And also, lastly, leaders and stakeholders in the region should establish effective training and investigation mechanisms capable of unraveling the sources of terrorist funding in the region, And this is also with a view to adequately reduce or completely dismantle the activities of criminals in the Sahel region. So I'll stop there for now, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for this rather comprehensive listing of actions and recommendations. I will very, very quickly just go over some of the points that you've highlighted, but without wanting to repeat what you've just said. I think you insisted very much on the need to well, one important aspect to need to recharge the Lake Chad, and sorry, I have something on my screen. Oh, sorry. Yes, the recharging Lake Chad, which is a source of livelihood, yet going to be a very costly venture, probably nonetheless vital for the region. You mentioned the need to support and restart employment for persons in the region and your country as well, and that you are also working very much on infrastructure, housing for IDPs and development parties. You mentioned the security aspect and how to include ECOWAS in the priority action plan on the counter-terrorism insurgency, and contributing to this $1 billion fund. Your plan, you also mentioned your plan to promote a culture, peace, culture through peace, through dialogue, and insisted on good governance, being inclusive, increasing education, job creation, and infrastructure, highlighting the need to support women and youth to enhance resilience. I will quickly just jump to the sort of your key points. The need to increase services in the Sahel and seek cooperation in funding, information sharing, and international cooperation. And I think you brought a very interesting point in the need to have a sort of a ministerial forum, periodical, perhaps 3 or 4 times a year, to discuss the issues at the highest level. And among those, the points that you raised, the need to tackle corruption and to increase transparency. I appreciate very much your thoughts on this and the concrete nature as well of your remarks. I would now, for the sake of time, thank you very much, and move our session now to our next panelist, His Excellency Mr. Abdoulaye Maadey, Special Coordinator for the Development in the Sahel. Your Excellency, the Sahel region is as much a land of opportunities as it is a land of challenges. The Sahel is abundant in natural and human resources and offers tremendous potential for growth. However, the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic has served to exacerbate existing challenges to peace, security, and development in the region, and threatens the erosion of hard-won development gains. As a recently appointed UN Special Coordinator for Development in the Sahel, you were asked to lead collective efforts to implement the UN Integrated Strategy for the Sahel and its support plan, and scale up UN development response in the Sahel. A few months into your new role, where does the UN support plan stand in terms of implementation? In your assessment, how can the UN enhance buy-in and ownership of the support plan from the countries of the region, as well as the region's external partners? And in this vein, what incentives would the UN envisage to promote greater coherence of approach and action across local, national, regional, and international actors? How can a holistic vision for sustainable development be advanced in the Sahel while taking into consideration the Sahel's region variable geometry? Your Excellency, the floor is yours.
Merci, Christophe. Excellencies and dear friends. Before I give you my état d'esprit, 2 months after my appointment, let me say how pleased I am to be among you today to discuss what the forum organizers stamped as the Sahel region in dire need of new modus operandi. I welcome the forum's organizers' angle and would even, if you allow me, go beyond this axiom that they are putting forward by affirming that the Sahel people and governments, as well as all actors working in the region, need a new paradigm for lasting peace and sustainable development. Luckily, a roadmap has been laid out at the recent G5 Sahel Summit and the Sahel Alliance General Assembly in N'Djamena on 15 and 16 of February last month, not only demonstrating that peace, security, and development are intertwined and mutually reinforcing, but also calling for a political and civil surge. Most importantly, a surge in development action. I think they better put it in French when they say sursaut politique, sursaut civil, et sursaut de développement. I don't know how to translate it properly in English. But N'Djamena should enable progress. Firstly, on a diplomatic level, by strengthening cooperation between the G5 Sahel and the countries bordering the Gulf of Guinea, and by promoting better cooperation with countries on the north like Algeria, Morocco, and Egypt. So, because we see the reverberation of the Sahel issues beyond the Sahel. Secondly, on a political level, by accelerating the implementation of the Algiers Accords by the Malian authorities. And thirdly, through a civil surge to ensure progress on stability, inclusion, and sustainable development. By this, I mean supporting the governments and the people of the Sahel in reinforcing states' capacities and presence, in particular at border areas, and by ensuring access of populations to basic services, especially health and education. Operational success will remain fragile without long-term development achievement. This will require more prevention, responsiveness, and better coordination between the different actors. Not only the G5 Sahel countries, but also in the whole region. This is where the UN plays a bridging role, ensuring continuity and coherence of action, as well as strengthen coordination and cooperation. The UN support plan for the Sahel was conceived precisely to provide a common vision through a joint framework, which is called the United Nations Integrated Strategy for the Sahel, the UNIS, which have been reviewed and endorsed by the Security Council. But first and foremost, that plan was developed to make a real change in the region. Operational successes will remain fragile if we do not operate within the Nexus Plus vision, encompassing peace and security, humanitarian assistance, development, but also and fundamentally human rights, and other important dimensions that we forget very often, like religion, culture, history. And this is indispensable to efficiently address the root causes of the crisis and build a solid foundation for a better future for the Sahel people. Operational success, again, will remain fragile if we do not, and my good brother Maman Sidikou always repeat it, rightly so, if we do not fully align our various support and funding with national and regional strategic priorities. For me, this must be a binding imperative. So dear friends, we need to pivot on the Sahel. Pivoting on the Sahel in the post-COVID era and in the SDGs decade of action, for me, we require some massive leverage, primarily around what I would see as three critical points. Number one, putting the population at the center of our collective action. And by that, I mean their well-being, their safety, their mobility, their dreams and aspirations, but also ensuring their ownership and participation through national and local engagements. Citizens of the Sahel want to be given a voice and a role in developing their countries. They want to see address the syndrome of the elites and the experts' capture of the Sahel narrative in action. They want to be recognized as agents of change, especially women, girls, and young men, not always as we see it in the media, as victims, as perpetrators of violence, or vulnerable groups. Number two, we need to pull out the necessary institutional and structural reforms that will enable the transformation of the economies of the region. This would require changing the narrative underpinning the current international strategy or strategies that from highlighting insecurity all the time to one centered on governance, one where the root of the Sahel's crisis is key and will pump coalescence of the population of the region to our common objectives. It is true that military operations are important, but they should be at the service of such an approach. For that, we must reorder our collective priorities and put wider governance reforms and local dialogue first in order to foster the state's return to rural areas and to the borders, and to ensure equal access to social services and improve public sector financial management. Third, generating a transition towards greening the Sahel through the green and digital revolution. We have entered 2021 with exciting news for the development of green economy on the Sahel. At the last One Planet Summit, $14+ billion were pledged to advance the implementation of the Great Green Wall. Even today, I did the calculation with the Great Green Wall Secretariat. We have in the pledge to be mobilized some $20 billion. This is quite tectonic. In a post-COVID context, where Sahelian countries are grappling with very, very stressed fiscal space and funding problems, the Great Green Wall will be a catalyst to better rebuild after the pandemic by accelerating sustainable development. And I would concur with what the minister has said just now. And as the UN Secretary General said, the year 2021 must be the year of humanity's reconciliation with nature. Hence, nature-based solutions must be at the center of green economic and social recovery in the Sahel, especially for women and youth. Friends, it took the Marshall Plan to lift Europe out of the grooves of the aftermath of the Second World War. It may require the same energy to lift the Sahel and put it on the right path to recovery. Such investment will build on the Sahel's major assets, including solar and water energy, and you said it, Mr. Moderator, in the beginning, and its incredible demographic dividend. We need to aim at bigger plans, at innovative funding initiatives if we want to transform the Sahel. Dear friends, I would conclude by saying that it is high time for us to shift the narrative on the Sahel. If you want to attract growth, prosperity, success, and foster hope, we need to shed a light on the Sahel's resources, opportunities, positive dynamics, and we have so many positive dynamics that are going on, but yet we are not capturing them and we are not sufficiently broadcasting them. And successful national and regional initiatives that are outstanding. We need to recognize them. But this first requires a shift in mindset, especially from us actors working on the Sahel crisis, as well as from the Sahelian youth. We can play our part, all of us, by maintaining the Sahel agenda on major global fora, such as this one, ASWAN, or TICAD, which is coming next year in Tunis, the G7 and the G20. Indeed, the Sahel is a global public good. Let's protect it and invest in it together. It's a win-win for the Sahel, it's win-win for the continent, it's a win-win for the world. Only by joining our forces to showcase the richness of the Sahel, the success stories, and the impact of our collective and integrated action will we be able to progress on our path towards achieving lasting peace and sustainable development in the region and beyond. I invite you all to this call of action, and over to you, Mr. Moderator. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for this very comprehensive and inspiring presentation. So in the interest of time, I will hold any comments or sort of summaries perhaps for the end, but in any case, I'm certain that these are being recorded and they will be shared afterwards. So we will move right away to our next panelist, who has a recorded message for us today. This is His Excellency Maman Sambo Sidiku, Executive Secretary for the G5 Sahel. So I would ask Lena to please put this presentation on the screen. The leading question for this is that the Sahel stability and prosperity has been seriously challenged in recent years, and the COVID-19 pandemic has exacerbated an already volatile environment. It has become evidently clear that the security-based solutions need to go hand in hand with governance and development efforts through a comprehensive and holistic approach. The G5 Sahel states convened for the G5 summit just weeks ago in N'Djamena, as just mentioned by our previous panelist, where the deployment of additional troops, specifically to the Liptako-Gourma tri-border area between Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso, was pledged as part of the G5 Sahel group's fight against the surge of terrorism in the region. Your Excellency, in light of the recent developments and the changing landscape brought about by the COVID-19 pandemic, how has the G5 Sahel adapted its counter-terrorism efforts in the region? What are the measures being taken to ensure coordinated action between Sahelian states, as well as with other international partners such as the UN, the EU, and the IFIs, and regional partners such as the African Union, ECOWAS, and ECAS? Lastly, how does the G5 Sahel ensure that its security responses are complemented and reinforced with investment in sustainable development? The presentation will now be aired.
Distinguished panelists, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. The prevailing context in the Sahel region is already well known and adequately captured by the organizers in the document they have shared with all of us, I believe, and so I will not speak to that. Let me therefore highlight a few points in response to the issues raised by the moderator. Firstly, I would like to underline that the growing interest and attention on the Sahel could not have come at a better time, most especially as we seek to enhance our response to overlapping peace, security, and development threats and challenges with the COVID-19 pandemic still with us. So, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, let me stress here that at the G5 Sahel, we are increasingly mindful of a reality that security-based solution might not just be followed, but be intertwined with governance and development approaches, and to ensure that we do so from their conceptualization through to implementation on the ground, so that these efforts are comprehensive and holistic. In practical terms, ladies and gentlemen, we want to make sure that, especially in this COVID-19 situation, we are working from the lenses of making sure that as we engage the armed groups, but we are also making sure that we contribute to saving jobs and livelihoods especially for the youth and our populations in the rural areas, so that our huge informal sector is protected. Now about coordination of efforts and what we are doing to ensure that our security efforts are complemented and reinforced with investment for sustainable development. Allow me to use the opportunity to make reference to our partnerships. Our partnerships and constant engagement with all actors are informed by the need for interlinkages and synergies, both among themselves and with other sub-regional, regional, international organizations, so that the plethora of strategies launched by these various actors are effective in capturing and addressing the complex realities on the ground. And to facilitate this, the G5 Sahel has, as you may have observed at the most recent summit in N'Djamena last month, invited and welcomed the participation of all these institutions, including United Nations, with the distinguished participation of my brother Abdoulaye Marguerite, the Special Coordinator for Development in the Sahel, the African Union, ECOWAS, ECAS, the LCBC, and the Sahel Alliance, whose General Assembly is a major event feeding into the oral discussions and outcome of the G5 Sahel Heads of State Summit. Lastly, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, all of these engagements, coordination, and complementary efforts would make little meaning if there are no tangible, positive results on the ground and in the lives of our people. So how are we able to facilitate the required investment in sustainable development? Again, it is about partnerships and close collaboration, starting from conception of intervention through to implementation. And here, let me illustrate our engagement with the African Union with regards to a decision of the Assembly of Head of State and Government to deploy 3,000 troops in support of the G5 Sahel. This process, which is now far advanced, has involved consultations with all stakeholders, leading to a provisional approval of a concept of operations, including the area of deployment in the Liptako-Gourma tri-border area between Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso by the AU's Peace and Security Council. We should soon be taking the process towards, or forward rather, to conclude consultation with stakeholders on the ground, principally civil society, community gatekeepers, religious leaders, and the private sector, so that we can facilitate appropriate stabilization programs as investments in sustainable development. Ladies and gentlemen, it is no secret that the G5 Sahel countries have been significantly impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. And so if there is anything we must do to help the G5 Sahel countries to recover stronger and rebuild better post-COVID, I will simply reiterate in summary what I need to do at the General Assembly of Sahel Alliance. And that is that, and the international community, especially development actors, need to accompany G5 Sahel government's effort to restore and strengthen the resilience of our populations, social cohesion, and citizens' confidence in their public institutions. These would entail providing appropriate support for the development of the Sahelian private sector, giving special attention to women and young people, to agricultural value chains, to the business climate, to issues of access to financing, risk sharing, strengthening of skills, and innovation. I thank you very much.
We thank His Excellency Maman Sidiko for his message. And now I will propose to move on to our next speaker, His Excellency Alexandre Zouer, Assistant Secretary General for Rule of Law and Security Institutions, Department of Peace Operations. Your Excellency, Secretary General Antonio Guterres stated that the best reaction to the pandemic is one that responds proportionately to the immediate threats while protecting human rights and rule of law. Today, peace operations are not only increasingly deployed in situations of ongoing conflict where there is no peace to keep, but are also forced to grapple with the myriad of challenges brought about by the COVID-19 pandemic. How is the Office of Rule of Law and Security Institutions adapting to this evolving landscape, especially in the Sahel region? More specifically, and amidst the growing realization of the pressing need to position governance issues at the core of interventions in the Sahel, how can we balance between stabilization and restoration of state presence on one hand, while taking concerted steps to reconfigure the role of the state vis-à-vis the citizens in a manner that builds trust and strengthens the social fabric on the other? Your Excellency, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator, and it's my pleasure to participate in this high-level panel. And first of all, I would like to congratulate all speakers on a very good in-depth analysis of root causes and drivers of insecurity and political instability and economic challenges in the Sahel region. Well, I will address the rule of law and security institution challenges in this part of the world. Well, as we already have heard, the Sahel faces persistent challenges to the rule of law and to security institutions. National justice and security institutions in many cases lack capacity, resources, and effectiveness. Well, in some cases, security vacuums have enabled terrorist organizations and others to destabilize the region, and from Mauritania to the Lake Chad Basin. The trend of violent incidents continues to increase above pandemic levels, with terrorist groups definitely taking advantage of this pandemic, and also of the porous border zone, as well as of national authorities being ill-prepared to address transnational threats. So the interlinkages and fluid alliances among non-state armed groups, including organized crime and extremist groups, exacerbate conflict dynamics beyond national borders. And in my view, it's very important that we consider this at regional and at sub-regional challenge to international community and national authorities. Well, deficits in the formal rule of law and security institutions have left grievances related to community violence, leading to public distrust and undermining state legitimacy. In addition, the lack of adequate judicial processes and detention capacities has hampered military and law enforcement operations. Overcrowding and violent extremism in prisons and lengthy pretrial detention terms are further major concerns of our office. While security sector reform remains at the core of conflict prevention and resolution strategies for the Sahel, incomplete processes pose a threat to stability. Well, it is worth to noting in this context the commitments made by the already mentioned N'Djamena summit of the G5 Sahel at the level of heads of states, and decisions made there to strengthen the governance of the security sector with a special focus on human resource management, transparency, and accountability in public finances, and of course, enhanced respect for human rights. The current pandemic is placing additional strain on rule of law and security institutions, and some governments utilize state of emergency to consolidate executive power at the expense of the rule of law, and in individual cases, they suppress dissent and dissent and undermine democratic institutions. And this can definitely aggravate social tension and fuel conflicts in the Sahel area. Well, what is ORLC is doing to support rule of law and security institutions in the Sahel area? We have adapted to enhance our support where it was needed, complementing the contribution of other partners and focusing on the needs on the ground. In Mali, for example, through MINUSMA, which was already mentioned by the Honorable Minister, we are improving security sector governance, assisting with the demobilization of former combatants, complemented by community violence reduction projects, strengthening the justice system, including by helping establish the Pôle Judiciaire Spécialisé, which is focusing on prevention of violent extremism and counter-terrorism activities. We are working on improving prison management, building national police capacity, and mitigating threats from explosive hazards through our Mine Action Service of the United Nations. Well, in non-mission context for our department, in Burkina Faso, for instance, ORLC is helping mitigate the threat from improvised explosive devices, investigate and prosecute terrorism-related offenses, enhance prison security and the management of high-risk detainees, design and implement the security sector reform process, and map the presence of armed groups and to find ways to manage them. We are partnering in this with many UN agencies, funds, and programs, especially such as the UN Office of Counterterrorism, Office of High Commissioner for Human Rights, UNODC, IOM, and many other important players, with UNDP being our partner of choice in the promotion of the rule of law agenda. Well, we are supporting in many cases Ministry of Justice of individual Sahel countries with screening suspects of terrorism-related crimes, and especially those held in pretrial detention. We are trying also to facilitate community reinsertion of innocent suspects. However, resources are very scarce, and I have to be very frank with you. We are trying to mobilize some additional resources, and it's very important that all international and bilateral partners to join this effort. And I was very glad when the special coordinator for Sahel was referring, to the ongoing resource mobilization and investment in these regions to sustain the progress made. Well, in terms of concrete recommendations, what critical actions need to be taken at the international, regional, and national level for the Sahel region? First of all, we believe that there is no purely military solutions to all of these problems, though problems of insecurity and terrorist threats and challenges are very serious. Well, military solutions need to be complemented by more political and sustainable capacity building approaches as a part of overall and long-term strategy that is more coherent with the needs and more likely to be sustainable for many years. I hope to see national and international strategies in the Sahel focus more on the role and engagement of local communities, and especially those in rural areas, with special role for women and youth, as it was already mentioned in previous statements. Well, we have to make certain shifts in our strategy, which should lead to such outcomes, and we should look, how we can reduce violence at the community level, and not only at the national and subnational level. Also, the international community should support national efforts to be inclusive and break the disconnect between governing elites and populations. Create a space for exchange between communities, equip them to identify and respond to the challenges that affect them, understand and emphasize the value of customary and informal systems rather than discard them, And also we have to listen, as I said already, to young people, women, and marginalized groups and other excluded from political processes, groups which sometimes are underrepresented at the national level, but are very, very important players at the community and sub-national level. And we have to do this in order to identify solutions that are not only appropriate and relevant, but which are truly national and not just emerging from the governmental decisions and from the high levels of executive authority, but also, you know, from community-based. Well, lastly and finally, I believe that Sahel partners should formally commit to matching any program of support to national authorities with an equivalent support to rural, decentralized, and often neglected communities in the country in question. And this is very important, because it was mentioned that Sahel programs are global, they're regional, and they're country specific, but also, you know, if we go to the community level and if we introduce elements of rule of law and social justice at this level, we can expect much faster results. Thank you very much, Mr. Moderators, and once again, congratulations to all participants of this panel.
Your Excellency, I thank you very much for your remarks. I see that time is moving, well, always as fast as it does, but we're nearing the end already. So let me move right away to our next panelist. Her Excellency is Rita Laranjia, Managing Director for Africa of the European Union's External Action Service. Today's strategy with Africa is a roadmap to move forward and bring our partnership to the next level. These were the words of the European Commission President, Ursula von der Leyen. Your Excellency, the European Union has been an important player in the Sahel region. The EU Strategy for Security and Development in the Sahel and its accompanying Sahel Regional Action Plan 2015-2020 stressed the need for cooperation between all stakeholders in the region. As the Sahel Action Plan has come to an end in 2020, the EU is proposing a new ambitious partnership with Africa with a vision to intensify cooperation through partnerships in key areas including green transition, digital transformation, sustainable growth and jobs, peace and governance, migration and mobility. Reflecting on the EU strategy for security and development in the Sahel and its action plan, what are the key lessons drawn and what were the primary gaps that hindered implementation? Moving forward now, how will the EU strategy for Africa address these gaps? Where does the Sahel region fit within this broader framework? Ms. Laranjia, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I thank the organizers of the ASWAN Forum for inviting the European Union and for dedicating this special session to the Sahel. I'm very happy that the European Union can be here among African friends. The EU has indeed adopted a strategic partnership with Africa, but it has also adopted a specific strategy on the Sahel, which is nowadays being revised. And this happens because the Sahel indeed matters for the European Union. As all the previous speakers, the EU is also very much concerned with the fate of the Sahel populations. And it is why, since several decades, the EU has been at the side of these popular authorities to support their people. At this point, I would dare to say that the glass is half full. There are some reasons to believe that positive change is on the way, so I would incline to support the need for a positive narrative that has been mentioned by previous speakers, but there are still deep crises going on in the Sahel, and many different ones, and some of them are indeed worsening. In the Central Sahel, we are facing among the world's fastest growing humanitarian crisis. You, Mr. Moderator, you have dwelt upon that and specifically indicated the parameters of this crisis, the scale and the severity of the humanitarian needs in the Sahel countries, with unprecedented over 13 million people affected by forced displacement, food insecurity, and reduced access to essential basic services. That is why the European Union last October co-chaired a ministerial roundtable to address those specific issues in Central Sahel, and we very much welcome the commitments that were made in that regard by the Central Sahel state authorities, and that were reiterated in the G5 summit held in Jamena a few weeks ago. More than 19 million people are in need of emergency assistance across the G5 countries. And to support, the EU has provided since 2014 more than 1.16 billion euros of humanitarian aid. We will keep up with this effort. We will stay by the side of the Sahel populations in the future, and we will give our support to face growing humanitarian needs. Unfortunately, as it has been said, the Sahel populations have also been suffering from COVID-19 that has been affecting their fragile national economies that are already burdened by very significant defense expenditures, as we well know. So that is why the Europe has organized itself in a Team Europe initiatives and has been providing very short-term support in a total of 265 million euros of budget support to Mauritania, Niger, Chad, Burkina, and giving this through this budget support operations, we have been giving more flexibility to the Sahel governments to allocate their resources to health and sanitary measures that are essential at this crisis moment. Besides this immediate support, the EU has also been contributing to the COVAX facility. The contribution has amounted to 500 million euros, and I'm happy to see that as a consequence of that, first vaccines are now arriving in Africa. We have seen in the last few days vaccines arriving, and we have news that in Mali today there were some vaccines arriving as well. On the longer term, the EU is also giving its support on budget, on debt relief operations, and namely in the context of the IMF catastrophe containment and relief, and in the framework of the G20. Although we still have these difficulties to face, we need to also indicate or to highlight that some positive evolutions have also occurred. In Mali, the Comité de suivi de l'accord pour la paix could hold a first meeting in Kidal for the first time. This was very symbolic, and it shows that there is that things are moving on. The conclusion of several local peace agreements in January are also promising as far as we see it. In Burkina, presidential elections were held in November, and showing that the democratic transitions are on the rise, and we are confident that in Niger and Chad, the same path will be followed. It has been also referred to, it has been very positive that Chad could already contribute with a new battalion to reinforce the G5 joint force. And it was very positive that Mauritania could hold a very successful presidency of the G5 Sahel, with achieving major results. Military successes in the fight against terrorism, with the support of Barkhane and Takuba, but military successes of the G5 Sahel Joint Force. We would be looking forward to this, also to this important contribution by the African Union that has been referred to already as well. What the Jamena summit highlighted was that these technical gains will only be sustainable if local populations affected get quick and sustainable access to basic public services, as well as social and economic opportunities, and that has been highlighted by previous speakers. And the EU has been giving its contribution in different contexts by supporting in Bamako, the Civilian Incident Tracking and Analysis Cell for the Joint Force, a mechanism that will help monitor on the field alleged abuses that could lead to concrete sanctions. And this is part of an important set of measures that contribute to strengthen the respect of the international humanitarian law and human rights by the G5 and national security forces, which consider that are essential, and namely to restore trust between the local population and the national security forces. The EU also welcomes very much the recent elaboration by the Commission nationale des droits humains du Niger of a report on the disappearances in the Tillabéri region, and also the issuance of the report on the International Commission of Inquiry in Mali of alleged abuses. We continue ready to support the Sahel states and their justice systems in this regard. I would also highlight that the EU strengthened the mandate of its EUTM Mali mission. We will provide military assistance through advice, education and training, not only to Mali, but to all G5 Sahel states and to its joint force. We will, in this context, continue to support the Sahel states' request to grant the G5 Joint Force a UN Chapter 7 mandate, and we have been making contacts also with the new US administration in this regard. Last but not least, it would be important to recall everyone is very much aware of it, of the in 2020 of the Sahel Coalition and its 4 thematic pillars. The EU has an important role to play together with the G5 Sahel in coordinating pillars 2 and 3. And the first High Representative for Sahel, Monsieur Jimé Adoum, has started his work. He will be has been in contact with the EU Special Representative on Sahel. They will be traveling together to the region, and we will be, of course, supporting his work. And it is very positive to see that the coalition is a reality and that many members are joining efforts. To conclude, I would say that we can be both realistic but also optimistic. Facts allow us to be both at the same time, as I have highlighted. We believe that the situation will improve. We have no other choice. We owe it to the Sahel populations, and the EU will remain a major partner to Sahel. Nevertheless, of course, the Sahel states bear the primary responsibility and also the benefits of all results achieved. Our external support will only be effective if it backs up strong political will and efforts to ensure inclusive governance, the rule of law, including the fight against impunity, and ensuring equitable access to the local populations to basic public services, as security, justice, water, health, and education that remain key for lasting security, development, and peace in the Sahel. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. We are still a bit pressed for time, so I'll move immediately to our next panelist, Mr. Nicolas Perrin, Lead Social Development Specialist for the World Bank Group. Mr. Perrin, in November 2020, the World Bank Group launched a new project entitled Community-Based Recovery and Stabilization Project for the Sahel, which aims to address territorial development and fragility, conflict, and violence challenges in target areas of the Liptako-Gourma region of Burkina Faso and Niger through a regional approach supporting integrated socioeconomic services and infrastructure, livelihoods and territorial development, and regional data and coordination. The project adopts a three-pronged territorial development lens to ensure that the immediate crisis response needs are addressed in the communities that have the highest need while laying the foundation for long-term recovery in the region. Monsieur Perrin, how would you elaborate on the World Bank's three-pronged territorial development lens applied in this project? And what phase of the project currently reached, and what are the challenges that you foresee which might hamper its implementation? The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And good morning and good afternoon to everybody, and thank you for this opportunity. Yes, and I wanted to concur with what my colleagues have said previously. I mean, I think they laid out, you know, the diagnostic that we started with, like we did. I mean, meaning that for the World Bank, what we have been trying to do over the past year or so now has been to prepare a project, a regional project, which will complement the national initiatives that we have. And we've been trying to do that in several hotspots in the region. So we started with the Lake Chad. We are doing now a regional project in the Liptako-Gourma area. And we are starting the preparation of a new project in the northern parts of the Gulf of Guinea, covering Côte d'Ivoire, Ghana, and Togo and Benin. And all these projects have something in common, which is basically we are trying to think regionally how to complement the activities that we are doing nationally, but we try to act locally. Why do we try to do this? Because basically the diagnostic that we have, like many of you have mentioned, is that the crisis that those hotspots are facing are multi-sectorial. They are multinational in the sense that basically the crisis doesn't stop at the border, and the crisis has spillover effects. So to complement the initiatives that are being done nationally, we are trying to look at how we could set up some mechanisms that could basically have common approach at the sub-region level. And we try basically to do this by having a people-centered approach. So I will resonate with some of what my colleagues were saying, because the diagnostic for us in this project is that what we need to work is basically with communities, with their institutions, and try to rebuild also the social contract. So it's not just the what, about what are we supporting, but also on the how are we doing it. So all these projects have in common a very, very strong focus on citizen engagement, on community mobilization, on the reinforcement of local institutions, to try to build this social contract at the same time that we deliver goods and services. The goods and services, you have mentioned them, are basically about both this nexus on emergency and development, where we are trying basically to focus on delivering immediate services that are needed by communities, in particular in rural areas which are in danger. So that could be, you know, income generating activities, equipment, and so on. But at the same time, we try to accompany that with a structural approach, which basically will work on local development plans and try to reuse the local development plan that in most of the cases exist, to basically restart them a little bit, making sure that they are participatory, they are basically efficient and transparent, and use those plans to basically provide some investment which are more structural and integrated in nature. By doing so, what we are hoping to do is to target the social inclusion agenda, so that basically we give platforms for youth, for women, for people who feel excluded from the decision-making process into the prioritization of what needs to be done, but not basically bypassing government. In the contrary, trying to make sure that basically this contact between the local government, and the communities is being reestablished and function. Hopefully, what we are trying to do by doing that is having clusters of investments, which then can help us, to build the resilience of communities and institutions as a whole in some given areas across the two sides of the borders that we are basically targeting. At the same time that we do this people-centered approach, we also try to have a regionally coordinated approach as part of the project. So all these projects are owned and led by national entities and our clients. But what we are trying to set up as well is partnership with regional, sub-regional entities. So the Lake Chad, it will be with the Lake Chad Basin Commission. In the case of the Liptako-Gourma, it's with the Autorité de Liptako-Gourma. We are in the process of discussing with ECOWAS and other colleagues in the context of the Gulf of Guinea. And the idea is to build the capacity of the different stakeholders, both nationally but also regionally, to be able to share common knowledge about the area and to build on what is already there. We are not trying to restart something new, but rather, build on what the G5, the Alliance Sahel are doing and try to basically participate to that effort of, building the capacity of the sub-regional stakeholders so that they can have a discussion of quality about the area. So that's basically where we stand. I mean, we started the preparation of the Liptako-Gourma Sahel project back in October. So we are in the middle of it now. We are hoping that this project will go to our board in June. And we hope that it will be really starting activities probably in September. Each of these three projects that I mentioned are roughly between 300 to 400 million US dollars. And they are seen basically as a way for us to complement, as I said, the national efforts that we are supporting as well. To finish my intervention, I wanted basically to share also some of the key challenges that, like I think many of the institutions involved in that area we are facing. So of course, when we work, with local communities and local institutions, one of the key issues that we are facing is accessibility and security. So it's very important for us to work jointly with our UN colleagues, other partners, but also the security forces and so on. And by doing this, basically trying to find the right balance between emergency and development, but also about this, I would say, output and software. So it's not so much just what do we need to provide, but how do we provide it? Because basically we think that that's a way to basically rebuild this social contract and use the social fabric, which is very rich in the area and basically needs to be strengthened. And while doing this, I think the difficulty as an operational person is usually to find, the right balance between complexity and simplicity, because basically we need to have some integrated approaches, but we need to do it in a simple way, because as this panel shows, we have a lot of initiative going in the area. So we really need to be careful about the absorption capacity of our colleagues and an institution which basically have to support those efforts. And while doing this, making sure that we are doing it, in a coordinated manner. So that means that basically it's transparent, it's open, it's reaching out across the L with the different colleagues so that we can have a complementary approach. And so that's basically the effort that we are doing now. And I will be short because I know that you are short on time as well. So I will leave it here for the moment and wanted to thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Perrin, for keeping it short at this point, as we are running a bit over time. We will now quickly go to our last intervention from His Excellency General Francis Béhanzin, Commissioner for Political Affairs, Peace and Security at the ECOWAS Commission. Mr. Béhanzin, the floor is yours. I think you're muted.
Excellences, Mesdames et Messieurs, Messieurs les ministres, Messieurs les experts du forum Aswan, quand on doit parler le dernier, on se demande quoi dire, surtout après le secrétaire exécutif du G5 Sahel, les patrons des Nations Unies, le ministre fédéral du Nigeria pour les affaires étrangères. Je voudrais, au nom du président de la commission de la CEDEAO, M. Jean-Claude Cassibrou, et en ma qualité de commissaire aux affaires politiques, paix et sécurité de la CEDEAO, vous remercier pour l'invitation que vous avez bien voulu adresser à notre communauté régionale pour participer à ce grand forum de réflexion stratégique dénommé Aswan Forum, dont la deuxième édition se déroule sous le haut parrainage de son Excellence M. Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, président de la République fédérale de la République arabe d'Égypte. C'est vrai, le Sahel, comme vous vous en doutez, est une immense région qui s'étend de l'océan Atlantique à la mer Rouge, à la charnière des zones sahariennes au nord et des savanes. Il forme en réalité un arc du Sénégal au Soudan, comprenant le Mali, le Burkina Faso, le Niger, le Tchad. Mais c'est plus vaste que ça parce que ça va jusqu'au Cap Vert, en y incluant aussi le Nigeria, la Mauritanie qui était membre de la CEDEAO. C'est plus de 300 millions d'habitants et 7 États membres de la CEDEAO font partie de cette zone du Sahel. Depuis 2011, avec l'intervention militaire de l'OTAN en Libye, il est question de revenir dessus. La situation s'est complètement dégradée dans cette région avec beaucoup d'activités terroristes et mafieuses orchestrées par des groupes extrémistes. J'ai entendu parler du Burkina Faso, par exemple, où dans le cadre des élections que j'ai supervisées là-bas, en observation électorale, il y a eu une attaque terroriste à la veille de l'élection. Au Niger, en février 2021, il y a quelques jours, pendant que la commission électorale faisait les préparatifs, il y a eu 7 morts comme membres des commissions électorales. C'est vrai que la zone est très menacée et cela est dû à plusieurs facteurs qui ont été énoncés ici. Le changement climatique, les précipitations irrégulières, la sécheresse persistante, la crise alimentaire récurrente, etc., etc. Le manque d'eau, le manque de ressources d'eau a entraîné beaucoup de déplacements de populations et des conflits intercommunautaires. Ces 3 dernières années ont été marquées par une augmentation de la violence entre éleveurs et agriculteurs dans plusieurs pays. Rien qu'au Nigeria, où est le quartier général de la CEDEAO, plus de 300 personnes sont mortes dans le cadre de près de 100 incidents impliquant les éleveurs et les agriculteurs. L'autre vulnérabilité de la région, c'est une sous-infrastructure qui entrave les conditions économiques, sociales et environnementales. L'absence de gouvernance appropriée de cette zone, le ministre fédéral des Affaires étrangères en a parlé, d'institutions gouvernementales solides, ce que d'autres qualifieraient d'absence de l'État dans ces régions-là. Et la faiblesse de la cohésion sociale constitue des facteurs structurels qui contribuent au cycle de sous-développement, de conflits, de vulnérabilité. Face à cette situation alarmante que les uns et les autres ont décrit, dont le constat est patent partout, beaucoup d'initiatives ont été faites et des stratégies au Sahel, au niveau régional, au niveau continental et international, a créé beaucoup plus de sérieuses contraintes de coordination, de financement et de mise en œuvre. Dans la région du Sahel, il existe une multiplicité d'acteurs, d'initiatives et de parties prenantes, telles que l'opération Barkhane, le G5 Sahel, la MINUSMA, Takuba, etc., pour s'attaquer à la situation de la sécurité. Il existe plus de 15 stratégies Sahel dans lesquelles sont toutes indépendantes les unes des autres et les acteurs de leur mise en œuvre sont tous présents dans le Sahel dans une ambiance peu cohérente, frisant parfois la cacophonie, Je vois un peu les peines de mon cher frère et ami, ministre Sidikou. Et je pense qu'il est nécessaire, la CEDEAO pense qu'il est nécessaire de mettre en place un meilleur mécanisme de coordination afin d'améliorer l'efficacité de cette myriade d'initiatives. Par rapport à la CEDEAO elle-même, une stratégie Sahel aussi existe depuis 2013 en collaboration avec l'UMOA et le SILS et articulée autour de 4 piliers importants. Les infrastructures de transport, la résilience et la sécurité alimentaire, l'éducation et enfin des mesures d'appui à la paix et à la sécurité et à la gouvernance en faveur du développement. Toutes choses qui vont barrer la route au terrorisme et permettre aux jeunes, aux populations de recevoir les services de l'État dans la zone. S'agissant des initiatives à mettre en œuvre, cette stratégie, la CEDEAO a élaboré un plan d'action 2016-2020 composé de 31 projets majeurs, infrastructures de transport, pour un coût total de 4 milliards 75 dollars US, 75 000 dollars US, mais la mobilisation des ressources n'a pas suffi pour permettre d'aboutir à la réalisation des projets. La Commission avait également entamé des consultations avec ses États membres faisant partie du G5 Sahel, à savoir le Burkina, le Mali, le Niger, afin d'assurer une meilleure coordination des actions dans la région du Sahel, d'où la conférence régionale sur la sécurité au Sahel et en Afrique de l'Ouest, organisée le 14 octobre 2017 à Bamako et dénommée Déclaration de Bamako, qui a mis en exergue le soutien de la CEDEAO à des initiatives complémentaires visant à lutter contre le terrorisme. Mais toutes ces initiatives ont, il faut le dire, Barkhane, MINUSMA, G5 Sahel, Takuba, ont quelque peu freiné l'expansion vertigineuse du terrorisme dans la région. Mais il fallait aller plus loin. D'autres initiatives ont eu lieu. Le sommet conjoint de la CEDEAO et de la CEAC du 30 juillet 2018 à Lomé sur le terrorisme. L'initiative d'Accra, mise en place par certains pays côtiers de la CEDEAO, parce que ça descendait vers la côte et certains pays côtiers ont pris cette initiative d'Accra avec des mesures préventives. Il y a l'Alliance Sahel, dont beaucoup de gens ont parlé, mise en place en 2017 par la France et l'Allemagne, à laquelle se sont joints des pays de l'Union européenne, la BAD, le PNUD. C'est une approche un peu plus holistique déjà. Il y a eu la conférence de coordination des partenaires et bailleurs de fonds du G5 Sahel pour le financement du PIP, programme d'investissement prioritaire tenu à Nouakchott en décembre 2018, avec une annonce de possibilité de mobilisation de 2 milliards d'euros au profit de 40 projets identifiés. Mon cher frère Sidikou est là, nous avons crapahuté pour cette réunion. Je ne sais pas s'il a pu réunir les 2 milliards d'euros au profit des 40 projets identifiés. Il y a eu la récente coalition pour le Sahel créée en 2020 à Pau, en France, et qui est en structuration opérationnelle, qui est peut-être une bonne solution. Il y a eu le récent sommet de N'Djamena de la coalition pour le Sahel de février dernier, à laquelle la CEDEAO a participé. Mais de façon générale, au niveau de la CEDEAO, compte tenu de la progression du terrorisme dans toute la sous-région, voire le continent, voire le monde entier, parce que le terrorisme n'est pas une personne, il y a eu un plan d'action prioritaire 2020-2024 pour éradiquer le terrorisme dans l'espace CEDEAO qui a été adopté par les chefs d'État et de gouvernement de la CEDEAO le 21 décembre 2019 à Abuja, pour un budget de 2 milliards 300 millions de dollars US à développer selon 8 axes prioritaires suivants. 1. Mutualisation des efforts et coordination des initiatives de lutte contre le terrorisme. 2. Partage efficace et direct d'informations et de renseignements entre les services de sécurité des États membres. Des projets sont en cours de développement. 3. Formation et équipement des forces armées et des services de sécurité. 4. Renforcement de la gestion du contrôle des frontières. 5. Renforcement du contrôle des armes et des produits sensibles à usage multiple. 6. Lutte contre le financement du terrorisme. 7. Promotion de la communication, dialogue intercommunautaire et prévention de l'extrémisme violent. le ministre fédéral du Nigeria l'a dit. 8, mobilisation de ressources pour la lutte contre le terrorisme. Globalement, et sans abuser de votre temps précieux, nous pouvons dire que la CEDEAO est désormais prête pour assumer pleinement son rôle de leadership politique dans la lutte coordonnée contre le terrorisme et le crime organisé transfrontalier dans l'espace sahélo-saharien, ainsi que dans la coordination et la création de synergies entre les initiatives pertinentes qui ont été déjà prises.
Votre Excellence, excusez-moi, Votre Excellence.
Invité à doubler d'efforts et nous voudrions finir pour dire qu'aux partenaires techniques et financiers, nous voudrions porter à leur connaissance que la CEDEAO organisera très incessamment une table ronde des bailleurs de fonds pour la mise en œuvre cohérente et responsable des actions contenues dans le plan d'action. Merci beaucoup pour votre attention. Je vous prie donc de croire que la CEDEAO est pleinement impliquée dans le Sahel et prend ses responsabilités pour l'application de ce plan d'action qui a été adopté par les chefs d'État. Je vous remercie.
Merci beaucoup, Votre Excellence. I must say that we have run over time. Unfortunately, there won't be time for me to summarize the different interventions. So I would simply be remiss if I did not at least mention one thing about migration, as I do represent IOM. I would simply say that in order to move forward, migration must be perceived as both a means for humanitarian protection and an opportunity for economic security and peace. I would, at this point, propose to close this session as we have been running over time, but I do want to thank all of our panelists for their very diversified approaches, reflections, strategic reflections, as was pointed out, but with a very common viewpoint after all. So I will close it here and thank everybody once again for their participation and attendance today. Please have a good day.
Thanks a lot. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. Merci.
Merci Christopher, hein? Excellente réunion. Et
Merci.
bonne présidence.
Merci, merci monsieur.
Et merci Lina, hein? Merci à tous.
Merci beaucoup, monsieur, de nous avoir acceptés sur la plateforme.
Thank you for your excellencies for your incredibly insightful remarks. We will be sharing the outcomes of the discussion with all of your offices.
Thank you, Lina.
Thank you.